It's clear when there are paper bags on people's heads and empty seats that an NFL team is bad. This happens every year, but only a few teams can be in the running for the worst NFL team of all time. Owners calling plays instead of coaches firing a team president in September. Players retiring after winless seasons say below the rest, like the Cleveland Browns, who were already at the bottom of the NFL, but their terrible 2016 season was the start of something even worse. Even though the franchise is entering its 75th season in the NFL, it is one of only 4 teams that has never been to the Super Bowl. But in the fall of 2016, Cleveland hit new lows. Under new head coach Hugh Jackson, the Browns lost a franchise record of 15 games right away. So how does a team get to that point? To 1-15? It starts at the top. On January 3, 2016, Browns owner Jimmy Hassan fired general manager Ray Farmer, but didn't hire a replacement. Instead, he gave the job to executive VP Sashi Brown without actually naming him as GM. Brown had never been a GM before being given the job, and Cleveland was coming off a terrible 3-13 season in 2015. Jackson had only been head coach for 1 year before the 2016 season. The Browns were putting all of their hopes on third-round quarterback Robert Griffin, which made the odds even worse. In Week 1, they played the Philadelphia Eagles, who were an average team that season and gave up 20.7 points per game. The Browns could only muster 288 yards of offense and scored 1 touchdown in their 29-1 loss. Also, 50% of Robert Griffin's third pass attempts went incomplete. Given that RG3 was limited to third-string quarterback and scout team safety in his last year with Washington, it's not a surprise that he still struggled after multiple serious injuries had derailed his career. The Browns were willing to give him a $7.5 million contract despite the obvious red flags. If ignoring red flags was how teams won Super Bowls, the Browns would be like the New England Patriots. But RG3 did exactly what the warning signs said he would do. He hurt his shoulder and had to go on injured reserve. Teams need a consistent quarterback, and Cleveland lost their best player after just 1 week. What followed was another 13 weeks of pain in Cleveland. The Browns didn't win a game until December, losing by an average of 13.4 points per game in their first 14 games. They were just awful for most of the season, but they did win the ones they did. Because of players like running back Isaiah Crowell and wide receiver Terrell Pryor, the Browns got a break from the threat of a boring season in Week 16 when the bad San Diego Chargers came to town in a game that didn't matter for the playoffs. Thanks to 2 rushing touchdowns from Crowell, the Browns held on for a win. That win over San Diego stopped the worst-case scenario, but NFL fans know that it only put off what had to happen until the 2017 season. Things got so bad for the Colts that the team owners started calling plays. Without a doubt, the franchise hit its lowest point in the early 1980s. After a mediocre 7-9 season in 1980, the Colts were hoping to improve with second-year head coach Mike McCormick. After stealing a 29-28 season opening road win against the New England Patriots, they seemed to be on the right track. But that quickly turned out to be false. Baltimore would go on to lose 14 straight games and finish with a 2-4 record. The embarrassingly bad way they made history is still remembered, but not many names from the Colts squad have stood the test of time. Here are some embarrassing awards. Baltimore set a record for the most points allowed, giving up 533 in total, or 33 points per game. The 1981 Colts had the worst point differential in a 16-game season, with 68 touchdowns conceded by opponents. They had the most in a season and the fewest punt returns, with just 12. That last number is very interesting. The Colts only forced 12 punt returns. This means that there were games when Baltimore did not force the other team's offense off the field or put them in a position to punt. And opponents would also take their chances because they didn't respect the Baltimore defense. Chances converting 4th downs instead of giving the ball over. But on November 15, 1981, during a game against the Philadelphia Eagles, the Colts' incompetence reached a new level when Bob E.R.S., the longtime owner of the Colts, went into the coach's booth, replaced quarterback Burt Jones with Greg Landry, and then called plays. If Baltimore wasn't already the joke of the 1981 season, the owner taking control from his staff made it even funnier. Ears tried to fix the problem right away after their 38-13 loss to Philadelphia, but his comments came off as those of an owner who still didn't know what he was doing. I wish you would print it that I did not call the shots during the entire second half. I did it just for a minute or two. Then, after the touchdown, I shut up. Yes, it was my play to put Landry and Jones in and out, and it was my play for the touchdown. In an interview with Sports Illustrated years later, Burt Jones told his side of the story. "ERs couldn't have told you how many players were on the field, never mind what plays we had. All he was trying to do was embarrass the coaches and the players. When he told me to run, I threw. When he told me to throw left, I ran right." Surprisingly, the Colts did win another game after the disaster against the Eagles, and Baltimore beat New England for the second time that season. The Colts saved some good feelings with their second win over the Patriots after a 14-game losing streak, but those good feelings were quickly forgotten the next season when Baltimore went winless at 0-8-1 due to several games being canceled because of a player strike. Between 1981 and 1982, the Colts' combined record was 2-22-1. If the 1981 Colts were a clown show, the 1976-1977 Tampa Bay Buccaneers were a full-on circus. Circus NFL fans are excited that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers' retro creamsicle uniforms are back this season, and for good reason. They look great. But when the team first came out in 1976, fans weren't talking about their eye-catching jerseys. They were yelling that the team wasn't ready for professional football. "Gentlemen, I would hope we could play more aggressive football. I have never seen a team tackle this poorly in football in my whole life." See, the Bucs hired two college football legends to lead their team. On paper, a team led by four-time national championship winning coach John McKay and legendary Florida quarterback Steve Spurrier should do well. That's John McKay. I think he said he was going to buy an O.J. Simpson poster to remind himself of what it was like when he was a good coach. But in reality, injuries and dysfunctions slowed down Tampa Bay, and we ended up with 21 guys on the field. Because of 18 knee surgeries that had never been done before, it was almost impossible for the Buccaneers to win their first few games. This was made clear when they failed to score a touchdown in either of their first two NFL games, losing 43-0. In Week 3, they finally did score a touchdown but still lost 14-9 to the Buffalo Bills. In the end, Tampa scored a terrible 8.9 points per game. The Buccaneers were shut out 5 times during the season. On only 3 occasions did they keep their losing margin to just 1 score, and they lost by an average of 20.5 points per game. But even when your team is losing, it's important to laugh. That's why, during the Bucs' 0-4 season, McKay kept dropping press conference goals as the team suffered setback after setback. One of his jokes came while the Buccaneers were still looking for their after our first win late in the 1976 season. "We proved that we couldn't play on the road or in front of our crown. We'd like to have a neutral site." Or when he talked about his plan for players coming back to Tampa Bay after the 1976 season, he said, "Stop by my office tomorrow and get some fake noses and mustaches so no one recognizes your sorry asses." McKay did do some fortune-telling at the end of the season, saying, "We'll be back, maybe not this century, but we'll be back of," even though the Buccaneers came back the next season, it wasn't much better. In 1977, the Bucs went 2-12, with both wins coming at the end of the season. That meant they lost an NFL record of 26 straight games. In 1981, they finally won a playoff game under McKay, but near the start of the new century, Tampa Bay finally lifted the Lombardi Trophy after winning Super Bowl 37 in 2003. It took him years to get here. It took him 60 minutes to bring home the trophy. The 1976 Buccaneers could be higher on this list, but the team's first season and the many injuries they suffered keep them from going even lower. Only 5 players played all 14 games, which is unheard of in today's NFL. Despite the circumstances, it was clear that the 1976 Tampa Bay Buccaneers team was terrible, but they had a lot of reasons for it. They were a brand new NFL team. That's not true for the 2017 Cleveland Browns, because after one of the worst seasons in the team's history, they went even worse. They ended a rookie quarterback's career before it even started, and they were on track for a winless season. We want a team that will win. We're tired of losing every year. As we said about the 2016 Browns, they avoided a 0-6 season but seemed to delay the inevitable. The Browns stuck with head coach Hugh Jackson and general manager Sashi Brown in 2017. They had a 1-15 record in 2016, so clearly it was a recipe for success in 2017. No, I will not be departing at 1:15. I will be swimming in that lake over there, so that will not occur. The Browns became the second team in NFL history to go 0-16, and they did it in a painful way while teams like the 1976 Buccaneers didn't have many chances to do so. Actually win. The Browns lost 6 games by 6 points or less, including an overtime loss to the Green Bay Packers in Week 14. That's what separated them from our list's worst team. But but it only made the awful season even worse for Browns fans. Do something now. I want to win now. I'm sick of losing. I'm too old for this. What's even crazier is that Cleveland went undefeated in the preseason, but it didn't matter once the regular season started. Cleveland's defense was pretty good, ranking 10th in yards allowed per game. However, the offense was appalling, with rookie quarterback Desen Kaiser playing poorly. The Browns gave up on Robert Griffin III after 1 year and instead picked Kaiser in the second round of the 2017 NFL Draft. Kaiser, a former Notre Dame star, beat out Cody Kessler and Kevin Hogan to get the starting quarterback job. Prior to the season, Kaiser had one of the worst 15 games as a starter in NFL history, completing only 53.6% of his passes and throwing for 2,194 yards, 11 touchdowns, and 22 interceptions. It's a big red flag to throw that many interceptions, but averaging less than 200 passing yards per game shows how bad Kaiser was. The Browns quarterback only threw for more than 300 yards in a game once, and he only threw more touchdowns than Kaiser tried to help on the ground with 419 rushing yards and 5 touchdowns. But to be an NFL quarterback, you have to complete passes. In a 16-game season, teams that are close to winning but can't get the job done consistently have a coaching problem. In hindsight, hiring Jackson was a bad idea, but his reputation was good after his first head coaching job with the Raiders. He was Cleveland's faithful head coach for 2.5 years. That ended his chances of ever being an NFL head coach again. And yes, it was 2.5 seasons. Even though the Browns didn't win a game in 2017, they hired Jackson back for the 2018 season, but fired him after a 2-5 start. That's a tough pill to swallow when you've given it your all and worked very hard. As one of the NFL's oldest teams, the Lions have been through a lot. They have only won one playoff game in the Super Bowl era and have never even come close to playing in football's biggest game. But none of their problems have been as bad as they were in 2008. There is no pride in these Lions. Third-year head coach Ron Marinelli hadn't done great in his first 2 seasons with Detroit, going 10-22, but nothing could have prepared fans for the 2008 season. It starts and ends with the Lions' defense. 11 times they gave up 30 or more points, almost breaking the 1981 Colts record for most points given up in a single season. It was clear that the loss was very discouraging for the Lions, especially since Marinelli was a defensive-minded coach. For the rest of the 2008 season, Detroit didn't even come close to winning a game, who later became the defensive coordinator for the Dallas Cowboys. Both Kitna and Pepper were in their last years in the league and well past their primes. Pepper was a 2-time Pro Bowler with the Vikings in the mid-2000s, while Kit's direct style was showing signs of wear and tear near the end of his career. Then there was Dan Orlovsky, who spent most of his first 3 years with the Lions on the practice squad. He quickly became the backup quarterback to Kitna and eventually took over as starter when the veteran quarterback was having trouble. Orlov's first start was in that 12-10 loss to the Vikings, which led to one of the most famous plays in NFL history. The former UConn quarterback accidentally ran out of the end zone for a safety in the first quarter, giving the Vikings 2 points. Obviously, only 2 points separated the teams at the end of the game. Orlovsky is now one of the most famous football analysts working for ESPN, but that play will never be forgotten.